What's going on, everybody? Mark Farzy here for the Farzy Show. Good to be along for the ride. Yes, it is a little bit of a different shot. Yeah. We again couldn't get the camera going, so this is what you have for me today, folks. I apologize for being late. I apologize for not having the camera up and ready, but for the people on the podcast, you're still probably getting the better end of this deal. Let us start off by talking about something that I just really need to get off my chest, and it might be the most profound thing I've ever had to say here on the Farzy Show, and it's just the New York Mets. All right, I just want to say this. Welcome to the table of wild cards. Welcome, New York Mets. Welcome, New York Mets, who were in first place by 175 days. They were in first place. The New York Mets were in first place 175 days. And now they're a wild card team. Now this like, I don't know what it is. I should hate the Braves more than I hate the Mets, but I don't. I don't know why. Because the Braves went on that long run of 14 straight division titles. Now it's 5 straight division titles, and 14 straight division titles is kind of like, well, how do we even compete with that? But like the Mets, who by the way beat the brakes off the Phillies, worse than the Braves did, by the way. For whatever reason, I just enjoy their faltering. They're collapsing. They're surrendering the division more than I would a million times over than the Atlanta Braves. So just on behalf of Phillies fans, on behalf of Padres fans, hey, Mets, welcome to the wild card. Welcome. You guys had a really adorable season of like being on top of your division. The NL East, of course, the Phillies division, and like just owning the Phillies throughout this whole season. You guys did a great job. But then you guys, you guys meted. Because that's what the Mets do. Mets are going to Mets. So welcome in. Welcome to the table of wild cards. It's nice to have you. Grab a seat. The waters are on us. Enjoy. All right. So if you're the Mets, are you doing the champagne celebrating like the Phillies did the other night? Because the Phillies certainly were in need of yesterday, being that they got no hit into the 9th inning. Thank you, Stubbs. Thank you, Garrett Stubbs, breaking that up against the Houston Astros. But the Phillies were definitely hungover last night. I have no doubt in my mind. The Phillies were in need of that scrapple, egg, and cheese on an everything bagel that I've talked about with such fondness. They needed the perfect hangover cure, and that's it. They needed the sauce. They needed the scrapple, egg, and cheese on the everything bagel. They needed a fountain soda of their choice, and either a Gatorade or a Powerade, just something to chug, and maybe a couple of hours at a diner with their closest friends trying to recount what exactly happened the night before. That's what the Phillies needed before going into that first inning and allowing 5 runs to cross the plate and a couple of bombs hit over the left field wall. So that's kind of what the Phillies could have used last night, and unfortunately they just didn't get it. But nonetheless, I can't be mad at the Phillies. I am just happy that they're in the postseason. They got one more game left in the regular season. They'll wrap that up. And our man, Rob Thompson, yesterday, Topper, put out a lineup that was lackluster. We'll call it lackluster. One thing did come out of last night, though, that was on a positive note. And I don't disagree with this. I want to make this clear. I'm not putting this out there. I didn't put it out last night on Twitter to refute this or say that Darren Dalton was insulted or not insulted, but they were using Dutch's name in vain or anything like this. I agree with this. Now, Dave Dombrowski, the Phillies president of baseball operations, was in the booth last night. And I forget if it was T-Mac or if it was Ruben Amaro. I think it was T-Mac that asked him about Kyle Schwarber's presence. Because we can all look on the field and see the production, second in the major leagues with 46 home runs. And Aaron Judge, by the way, hit his 62nd last night, which is historic. And Kyle Schwarber's production on the field has been right there and has been taken notice by everybody in baseball. But what we can't really see is the presence in the clubhouse and what he brings to the table in that regard. And I would assume that Kyle Schwarber would bring in this kind of veteran leadership. I would assume that he would be a leader. He would be a guy that a lot of people respected already in the clubhouse. And sure enough, Dave Dombrowski, I feel, gave him the highest praise you could give a Philadelphia Philly when it comes to leadership. This is Dave Dombrowski last night on the broadcast talking about the type of impact Kyle Schwarber has had on the Philadelphia Phillies.
Throughout my career, I was trying to think of some people that have been in the clubhouse with that type of respect and leadership, which is not easy to find. And I thought of one name myself, which was, you'll be familiar with, he came over in 97, was Dutch Dalton.
Oh, yeah.
That was the type of presence that he had, and that's the type of presence, to me, Kyle Schwarber also has.
When I heard that, I thought to myself, all right, is this a bit of a hot take? If anybody else said this other than the president of the Phillies, would I think this is a little too much? And in all honesty, I mean, look, the players will tell you that. People in the organization will tell you. If they'll tell you that, then that's how they go. But, as a Phillies fan and someone who grew up admiring Darren Daulton, the late, great Darren Daulton, as someone who has met Darren Daulton and talked to Darren Daulton and knows what he meant to that clubhouse and has talked to members of the 93 Phillies, and they've validated everything that you could say about Darren Daulton as a leader. If that's the impact that Kyle Schwarber is having, and I can't testify to that, being that I'm not a member of the team, I'm not in the front office, then, damn, that is the highest praise you can give a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. That is downright incredible. And I think about other great leaders that we've had, and another name that jumps to mind is obviously Brian Dawkins, what he brought to that locker room for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then all the leaders, the guy like Jason Kelce right now, being a leader and now a veteran presence in that Eagles locker room. I think about guys like that, and I certainly think about Darren Daulton in that regard. I think about great leaders in the past. We talk about the Stanley Cup championships in the 70s with Bobby Clark and guys like Bernie Perrant, guys like that. Let's say Bill Barber, guys like I think about these great leaders that we've had here in Philadelphia. I think about great championship runs, or at least getting to championship appearances in every sport here in Philly. And Darren Daulton's one of the top names on that list, if not the top name. Obviously not one to win, but still get a team to that promised land. And Dave Dombrowski was the general manager for 9 years of the Miami Marlins, the then Florida Marlins, when they won the championship in 1997. And he traded for Darren Daulton to come help them win that championship in 1997. And he said when he came into that locker room, even though there were a lot of veterans on that team, Devon White, Bobby Bonilla, just to add a few, Larry Brown, if you remember him, or not Larry Brown, the pitcher, blanking on his name. But you go out there with all the leaders they had on that team, and Darren Daulton was the one. Darren Daulton was the one that when he walked into that clubhouse, people took notice. It was like that principal walking into the room, everyone standing up straight, tucking in their shirts, right, making sure they look presentable. That was the type of impact a guy like Darren Daulton had in the locker room, on a clubhouse. And this is apparently the type of impact that a guy like Kyle Schwarber has. See, 46 home runs is great. But in a season that was met with a lot of turmoil, considering you had to change managers, you had to fire a guy who had won a World Series for a guy that had never been a manager before, you needed veteran presence. I've talked about how this was Bryce Harper is not only his team, but his franchise. Well, apparently Kyle Schwarber had a lot to do with that as well. So hearing that last night from Dave Dombrowski, I thought was very interesting. And it wasn't like a lot was going on for the Phillies in that game anyway, so I paid a little bit more attention to what was said in the booth than maybe I had this entire season, other than the time that Bryce Harper was in the booth, because that was pretty amazing right before he came off the IL. So the Phillies got one more game left in the season, and I just thought that was worth noting from the president of baseball ops. If you're just joining us, you're on my phone. You're on the iPhone. That's the camera today. We're still struggling getting that other thing working. Hopefully I have my some new pieces arriving via Amazon today to take care of this, and we'll give you a little bit more better audio and a little bit better visual as well. I'm getting me in the monitor over here. PJ, it's kind of a fishbowl, right? It's kind of a little fishbowl action, a little bit of fishbowl going on. Yeah, okay. Your coordinators addressed the media yesterday. Shane Steichen addressed the media as the offensive coordinator, of course. Jonathan Gannon addressed the media. And a couple of things stuck out to me. One, I'm puzzled by Jonathan Gannon. Like, sometimes people should just take the W, right? I know sometimes people, just take the loss and move on. Well, in the Eagles' case, take the wins, man. I know a lot of people look at Jonathan Gannon and say, I want to be more aggressive. They've been plenty aggressive this year from jump, and they were pretty aggressive at the end of last year as well. Jonathan Gannon took exception to a question that I thought he should have just take the W, man. I don't know who's asking this question, if it's Jimmy Kempski, whoever it is, but it's a valid question asking about the amount of blitzes that the Eagles are running this year are up a significant number, 6% from what they were last year. Here's how Jonathan Gannon answered this question about being more aggressive. Take a listen to this.
Sending big blitzes at a much higher rate this year than last year, like 6 or more rushers. Is that a reflection?
No.
Is that a reflection of increased
Fact check that.
confidence in the secondary, or is there something else to it?
Yeah, I think a little bit of blend of both. You know, I mean, I trust our cover guys. A lot of that's set up, like John, two weeks ago you asked that. You know, a lot of those calls are on the call sheet, and when they come up and we feel good about calling those calls, we call them. And I think that coaches are doing a good job of setting up the plan as far as, hey, these are when these calls are coming. This is the execution that's needed for these calls to work. And our guys understand the strength and the stress of the call. So, you know, we always kind of change week to week there a little bit with how we call it. But I think that, you know, it's not so much, hey, these are better calls. It's the execution of the calls that the players are doing a good job with. So feel good about how we're setting up the game plan right now, and that evolves each week. This week's a lot different. And we just got to go out and execute, coach it the right way and execute.
That to me, I'm like, your team looks far more great. Yes, you have better players. And essentially what he's saying, and that is, yeah, we're not really doing that much different than we did last year. We just have better players. It's essentially what I heard in that. But when he's like, no, we're not blitzing at 6% higher of a rate than we were last year. I mean, they fact check that. Like, who can't, like, that's not, you're not giving anybody else a competitive advantage by acknowledging that you're being more aggressive. And if you don't think that you're being more aggressive, then that, fine, let them think that so that they have to prepare differently than what you're actually throwing in their face come Sunday at 4:25. You don't get to go, why shoot that down? Is it because maybe we were right? And when I say we, I mean people outside the Eagles front office, people outside the coaching staff. Maybe fans were right about being a little bit more aggressive. Maybe media members were right about being a little bit more aggressive when it came to getting after the quarterback and trying to force them into mistakes. When you're number one, all of a sudden, through 4 weeks in sacks, which the Eagles are, if you're number one in takeaways and you were the worst team in the NFL in takeaways last year, and now you're number one in both takeaways and sacks, take the win, man. No, we're not blitzing that higher, much higher of a rate than we were. He didn't say you're blitzing 50% more. Like nothing outlandish, but you are, from last year to this year, you notice more 5-man rushes, 6-man rushes. The James Bradbury pick last week was a 6-man rush that got in Trevor Lawrence's face in order for him to rush that throw, forcing him into a mistake, and James Bradbury being able to just have a great veteran mind about him and jump that route for the interception. That was great. That's good defensive coordinating. Why refute it? Take the win, man. Yeah, we do have the better players. We're executing things at a higher rate. Things are working out for us. No. How dare you suggest that everyone else was right about potentially being more aggressive? Like, the thing that got me was that it did well last year in the second half of the season. Yes, they played inferior opponents in the second half of the season. But they were still upping. It was an uptick in being able to go after the quarterback, or at least scheming to go after the quarterback. So a couple of things ran through my mind. One is what I just pointed out, the idea of finally listening to the media or fans, and maybe they were right, and being aggressive can help you force those turnovers. And look, you have. And then the other thing was, maybe it's not about the fan base. Right? Maybe that's a little vain, okay, on my part, to think that we were right. Well, what about the other aspect of this? The name that keeps getting brought up in the background is Vic Fangio. What if this is Vic Fangio's idea? What if it's his consultation that leads to the Eagles being more aggressive? Then that doesn't look good for Jonathan Gannon. If somebody else had to come in and be like, oh, you should be more aggressive. And he's like, no, I don't really think that's what we need to do. No, seriously, you should be more aggressive. And then they're more aggressive. And then they're 4-0. And all of a sudden they have the most sacks in the NFL. They have the most takeaways in the NFL. They're allowing some of the fewest points per game in the NFL. Ooh. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, but that's not good. That's not a good look for Jonathan Gannon if somebody else's ideas are influencing this defense to the point of really elevating them above what they were last year. Now, the saving grace in all this with Jonathan Gannon is without question. Even guys that were here last year are playing at a higher level than they did last year, like TJ Edwards, for instance. I mean, Alex Singleton, friend of the show, love the guy. But TJ Edwards came in here and established that linebacker position, that middle linebacker position, established himself in that spot. Nakobe Dean is riding the pine right now. Another friend of the show. Watch SkyDrive, episode 2. Another friend of the show is still learning the NFL level of play. He's still learning the playbook. He's still learning the scheme and all that. TJ Edwards keeping a third-round pick off the football field, and Kazir White's doing a hell of a job too as a linebacker. Then you have an edge rusher like Hassan Reddick who is getting home. You do have better talent this year. Josh Sweat is another year better. He has certainly again progressed this year. You have a guy like Jordan Davis who is just blowing up the middle of the line of scrimmage along with Fletcher Cox. I mean, you got better pieces to this puzzle than you did last year, and James Bradbury being here is great and all that. But when it comes to this team, and CD Deuce is certainly progressing as well. But when it comes to what you have seen from this defense, it's just not even recognizable. I mean, yes, the guys you had last year have improved. The guys that you brought in are better than what you had last year. No better example than Hassan Reddick. But those guys that have come in here have led to a much better defense. That's the saving grace for Jonathan Gannon. Hey, I could have done this last year, but I didn't have any pieces to do it with. I didn't have the personnel. I had to coach to what I had, which was play 10 yards off the line of scrimmage because defensive line isn't going to get home. And the defensive backs, well, we got Slay. All right, great. We got Avonte Max in the slot. Okay, great. Steven Nelson's okay, serviceable. Linebacking-wise, TJ Edwards was still on the upswing. You're still trying to figure out what you were doing in the linebacker position with Alex Singleton still being here. So, yes, you got a lot better personnel than what you have this year. You've essentially traded Hassan Reddick, or Jannard Avery for Hassan Reddick. And that has led to a lot of fruit being buller in South Philadelphia for the Eagles. So, yes, you could argue that it's just that you have better players. But to dial up the amount of blitzes that you have seen, I am seeing a much more aggressive defense. And even if it was all Jonathan Gannon's idea, why shoot it down? You're blitzing at a higher rate. No, that's preposterous. How dare someone say that a stat that very much supports what people wanted me to do last year that wasn't my idea. How dare you say that we were 6%, we're 6% higher of a rate? That doesn't seem like that higher of a rate. You told me, like, in all honesty, if you told me like 20%, that's great. Oh, hey, let's calm down for a second. But I digress. Shane, one last thing from Jonathan Gannon, and that is the idea of playing against the 2-2 Arizona Cardinals and a guy that they have a quarterback named Kyler Murray. Somebody tweeted out recently that Kyler Murray looks like when he runs, when he scrambles, he looks like a little kid who stole a candy bar and his parents are trying to get it back from him. And now that someone has said that, I agree with the internet. I cannot unsee that. So that's what I see. He actually reminds me a lot of Darren Sproles when he runs. He really does. But yesterday, Jonathan Gannon was asked about playing defense against a guy like Kyler Murray and what he brings to the table.
I mean, all the coaching details that go into that with off-schedule plays, we got to be on it, and understand that those are going to come up in the game and what he likes to do when he tries to make off-schedule plays, and he can make them. I mean, he has a very unique skill set. He's very dangerous. He's got arm talent. He runs around. I say he's not like a stick and cut guy. He's kind of like one of these guys, and he's not afraid to give ground and lose 20 yards from the line of scrimmage and runs around and finds open people. It's hard to cover for a long time that long. So we got to have a good plan, and we got to execute it, and we got to stay disciplined. Our eyes got to be right. We got to rush as a unit. We got to cover as a unit. And it's going to take all 11 out there to slow this guy down.
That was our man, Jonathan Gannon, yesterday, addressing the media. Look, I think this is the type of game. I know it might get used a lot, but you got to keep a spy on him. I know that might take away from all the aggression that I love seeing so much, but you do have to think about matchups sometimes. And Kyler Murray's a guy that could just rip off yards left and right. And the good thing about this is that you have an opportunity here to face off against a guy that is a lot like a guy, or the defense has an opportunity here to face off against a guy that they see a lot during practice. And that's a mobile quarterback, a guy that can make throws, a guy that can deliver the ball accurately, a guy that can extend plays, and a guy that can rip off a run for 15, 20 yards. So this defense is well suited, well prepared to face a mobile quarterback like you are with Kyler Murray this weekend in Arizona. So I'm hoping that that's a big key to the Eagles' victory on Sunday and staying undefeated and improving to 5-0. But if you are going to face Kyler Murray, then you better have a guy that you can use that can do a lot of the things Kyler Murray does on the football field. The thing that jumps to mind with that is in week 1, if you remember, I think it was Nick Mullins, backup quarterback for Detroit, that the Lions were using as Jalen Hurts in practice. Nick Mullins is not Jalen Hurts. He's not the style of Jalen Hurts. He is nothing like Jalen Hurts. Nick Mullins, I believe, has run for negative 11 yards in his NFL career. Jalen Hurts has a lot more than that. Like, that's not a good mock-up. And you saw what he was able to do in week 1 against the Lions, escaping the pocket and all that stuff. Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts are a lot more similar. So the defense should be at least used to either being able to have a quarterback spy out there or at least knowing how to contain a running quarterback, or at least a guy that is a very mobile quarterback. I still like the Eagles this weekend. We'll get to that score in just a second. You are facing Zach Ertz this week. And I am a big Zach Ertz fan, and you guys know that I've done a lot of charity work. I'm actually going over to House of Hope today to shoot some stuff over there. And it's got to be weird, but if you had to choose as a former player in a city, former player on a franchise, on a team, whatever, the best way to face that team is probably them coming to you first. Like, it eliminates a lot more of the distraction. And Zach Ertz addressed the media earlier and talked to 2 days ago, and it talked about how the city of Philadelphia, what it meant to him and his family, and him to Julie, of course, and their child Madden. How beautiful is that? They had the first kid together, and it's wild to think about that. Just that, to go somewhere else, make that your home, and all that stuff. But I have to assume that it's easier. It's much easier to face that team when they're coming to you, as opposed to what kind of reception is he going to get? And using that all that conversation to surround the game. And we all know Zach Ertz would get cheered here in Philadelphia, no doubt about that. Super Bowl champion, go-ahead touchdown in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I think he'd be cheered big time. But it's got to be easier just not to have that conversation when you're the host team with your new squad. And by the way, Kyler Murray absolutely loves Zach Ertz in the red zone. And if any team should know how to defend against Zach Ertz, it should be this Philadelphia Eagles team. So there's two fortunate coincidences when it comes to facing the Cardinals if you're a member of the Eagles. One, if you're a member of the Eagles, both are on the defensive side of things. You should know how to face a running quarterback, a mobile quarterback like Kyler Murray, because you face off against Jalen Hurts every day in practice. And then when it comes to a key weapon in the red zone for them, that's Zach Ertz. You know Zach Ertz pretty well. The Eagles knew Carson Wentz pretty well, and they were able to take care of business against the Washington Commanders. So hopefully they have a very similar effect in this game against the Cardinals coming up on Sunday. What do we get into this conversation also with the Eagles? And it has to do with the running game. As I've told you throughout the week, Miles Sanders to me is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. I think he's been one of the most talented running backs in the NFL since he came in here. Now, talent is measured in stats. Right? It's measured in accomplishments. It's measured in being able to stay on the football field and not being injured. He doesn't have a lot of those things to go in his favor. But when it comes to just watching him every game and then watching the rest of the NFL, Miles Sanders can do a lot of the things that some of the top backs in the NFL can do. And he just didn't get that opportunity under Doug Peterson. He's starting now. He didn't get the opportunity in the start of Nick Sirianni's tenure here in Philadelphia. And then last year, they obviously went to a more run-first offense. This year, with the exception of the Commanders game, he has had 3 very solid games. He's had 2 very solid games, and he's had 1 career game. And that's what he's coming off of. I want to see this team continue to use Miles Sanders in the way that I know that he can show off how talented he can be. Because you can talk about a guy like Saquon Barkley is extremely talented. He's had injury issues in his career, so the numbers aren't there. This year they are. He is leading the NFL in rushing. He averages 1 more yard per game than Nick Chubb right now. And then you know who's third? Miles Sanders. right now in the NFL, I rattled off for you the rankings when it came to number 1 in sacks, number 1 in takeaways. Well, in rushing, Miles Sanders is the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL right now. Miles Sanders, that's incredible. He's getting an opportunity now to show off how talented he can be. He's going to get the numbers now to show off how talented he can be. And he's doing it in a contract year. He's doing it in a year that a lot of people in the early goings of training camp were talking about how Miles Sanders needs to prove, is he the number 1 back? Is he the guy? Kenny Gainwell's getting first-team reps. Boston Scott. And as I played for you guys on Monday, Nick Sirianni came out in the post-game press conference after their victory, their latest victory, their 4th win of the season. He came out after that game and he just said, guess who is the number 1 back? Miles Sanders is the number 1 running back. His son's head snapping around. Daddy, why are you so excited? Why aren't you like this at home? Whatever. But that is something that I think Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen both want to focus on going up against the Arizona Cardinals. It's continuing to use Miles Sanders. Because here's one thing you're doing. And this gets... If you're Shane Steichen or Nick Sirianni, it feels like every press conference, especially the day after press conference or right after the game, you get asked about Jalen Hurts taking hits. What's the balance between Jalen Hurts taking hits and Jalen Hurts gaining yards? And God bless them, they act like they're asked that question for the first time every time. I would literally just hold up a sign with the same answer. We balance. We just try to. Hey, don't get hit. Hey, go down. Hey, throw the ball away. Hey, get out of bounds. Slide, whatever. In this game, if you're handing the ball, or in any game, if you're handing the ball to Miles Sanders, you know what you're guaranteeing? If you're handing the ball off, even to Kenny Gainwell, you're guaranteeing that your running back is not getting hit. That's what you're doing. Read option, RPO, we all know, you can still get hit. That's still a bit of a danger. So when it comes to that, you got to make sure you're protecting your quarterback. If he is getting hit too many times, you start handing that ball off and making sure that he's not. Put him under center, have him roll back, hand that ball off, and you have Miles Sanders or whoever take off with it. If Miles Sanders is hot, which right now he is, again, 3rd leading rusher in the NFL, he scored touchdowns too. If he continues to do that, he'll not only show off his talent, he'll protect your quarterback. So if it does start to become more and more of a thing of Jalen Hurts taking those big hits, if he does take big hits in a game, you have Miles Sanders right there as a safety valve, not just in check downs and the passing game or anything like that. But if you can hand the ball to a running back behind a good offensive line, even if it's banged up like it was on Sunday, and you can still have success and still score touchdowns and have that drive be have that leading your team down the field as opposed to the passing game, by all means, take advantage of that. Miles Sanders right now seems to be up for the challenge. Kenny Gainwell in the red zone. He's got a bunch of touchdowns for a guy who rarely touches the football. I think it was Zach Berman that asked Shane Steichen about that yesterday at the press conference. And he really does. Boston Scott, the same thing. He's got to get healthy as well. But if you now have that running game going with Miles Sanders, exploit the hell out of it. Continue to use that. Give Jalen Hurts a bit of a break. First 3 games of the season really had to carry the team. This last game, this 4th game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he didn't have to carry them as much. He had to perform at a high rate, and he did. Wasn't his best game, but he's had great games this season. It's still a good game for him. But if you're able to ride that run game, continue to ride it. Keep on going. Because Miles Sanders seems to be very much up for the challenge. We talk a lot about Jalen Hurts. Is he the guy? Is he going to get a big contract in this year? Eagles got 2 big decisions to make. One is Miles Sanders. The other is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is probably the most important, being a quarterback. But when it comes to Miles Sanders, he's really got to prove himself that he can hang here in the NFL for a couple of more years at least and still be in his prime after he signs a big deal after this year. I'd love to see Miles Sanders play here in Philadelphia. And if he's running at the clip that he's running at now, it's going to be really difficult for the Eagles to look at him and go, see you later. We're good. Take it elsewhere. Here's Shane Steichen yesterday talking about whether or not Miles Sanders is doing anything different this year.
No, I think he's continuing to do what he does. He had a heck of a game. I think he averaged, 5 yards a pop. And then the biggest thing was, the most thing I was pleased with him and the rest of the offense was the ball security. The ball security in that game was at a premium. I know we had the 1 interception, but besides that, to not have any fumbles in that situation, in that game with that weather, that's a testament to the guys understanding how ball security is that important. And we talk about it more than any place I've ever talked about it here. It is all day, every day, and it's all about the ball. And he did a heck of a job holding on to that thing, and so did everybody else.
Shane Steichen yesterday at his press conference. I can't help but think that last year was such a learning curve year for Jalen Hurts that you really did have to rely on that run game. And Jalen Hurts, I mean, he had more rushing yards than Lamar Jackson last year. Lamar Jackson was hurt. But you had a great running game, and a lot of it was thanks to your quarterback because he was your leading rusher. Miles Sanders obviously had injury issues last year. It had been a long time since he was in the end zone, even going into last year. But you still had to ride that run game because your passing game was just not there. This year, thanks to the work that Jalen Hurts put in the offseason, thanks to A.J. Brown being here in Philly, thanks to Howie Roseman bringing in A.J. Brown, this looks like a complete team. It is not a lopsided team. You're talking about a guy like Jalen Hurts, who's up there amongst the league leaders in passing yards. And at the same time, you're talking about a guy in Miles Sanders, who among the league leaders in rushing yards. That's a great thing to have offensively. You want to talk about a balanced offense, a balanced offensive attack? That's a very balanced offensive attack. And even before Miles Sanders looked like he was going to rattle off 130-plus yards like he did against the Jaguars, even before he looked like he was poised to do that in the later stages of the second quarter, I got to give credit to Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen because they were running the football. It didn't feel like they were running the football because they were only averaging 2 yards per carry, but they stuck with it. They had about 10 pass plays to 8 run plays in the early goings of that game. And you might say, well, it was raining. Of course they're going to stick with it. Well, how many times have we seen in the Andy Reid era or Doug Peterson era, they didn't stick with it. They didn't have a balanced down. Oh, it's not working so early, 2 yards per carry. Get rid of it. Scrap it. Throw the ball. Even you're down 14-0. No, they stuck with it. They kept on running. And even though your offensive line was banged up, you had success. Because if you're gonna win those one-on-one battles, you're gonna win a lot of those battles, especially when you still have Lane Johnson out there. You still had Isaac Seumalo out there for the vast majority of the game, and you had Jason Kelce pushing up the middle as well. And Landon Dickerson, how many was it? 8 pancakes? 8 pancake blocks in that game? Oh yeah, he gonna run over people. And you look at some of those big runs by Miles Sanders. What did he do? He ran up to the middle of the line of scrimmage behind Jason Kelce, cut back, and took it for another 15 yards. You could continue to see that from Miles Sanders. You could continue to see that from this offensive line because that's how deep they are. By the way, still waiting to see what's going to go on with these injuries. Eagles did sign a kicker that, if I'm not mistaken, did beat Kyler Murray in college at a pretty big game, so we can look that up. But it was they brought in a kicker just in case Jake Elliott isn't good to go, which gives me even more reason to believe it was the right call to go for it on the 4th and 3rd later in that game and not kick the field goal. So I was fine with it then. I'm even more fine with it now. As if the Eagles are signing another kicker, if they're bringing in another kicker on the practice squad, that tells me that Jake Elliott just might not be ready for Sunday. Hopefully he is. But he might not be. But hopefully he is. I'm worried that he won't be, but hopefully he is. Let me tell you right now, little man, Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers, the other corner of 8th and Walnut, right in Philadelphia, right there on Jewelers Row. For over 40 years, my man's been in the love business in Philadelphia, taking care of Philadelphians, taking care of you while you try to get engaged, while you pop the question, while you try to find that perfect gift for the perfect person in your life. And if you are looking to get engaged, ready for love, diamond engagement ring, standing by at the ready. So do what I do. When it comes to all your big jewelry purchases, trust one man, the man with the perfect price, Steven Singer at Steven Singer Jewelers. One place, one price, the perfect price. Online at IHateStevenSinger.com. Always fast and free shipping at IHateStevenSinger.com. How about Manscaped, the leader in below-the-waist grooming? Because, fellas, you want to look good everywhere, right? Well, that's where the Platinum Package 4.0 comes in from Manscaped at Manscaped.com. Use promo code Farzy for 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com. It comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, and they come with skin-safe technology that helps reduce the risk of nicks so you can manscape with confidence and comfort. Plus, the Ultra Premium Body Wash, 2-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, crop preserver, anti-chafing ball deodorant, Crop Reviver Ball Spray Toner, anti-chafing boxers, and the Shed Travel Bag that you'll be using to hold the goods to take care of your goods from Manscaped. Manscaped, below the waist grooming, they are the leader. Manscaped.com, 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com when you use promo code Farzy. Freestone Farm CBD, FreestoneFarmCBD.com. Our friends at Freestone Farm CBD want to give you 20% off with promo code Farzy. If you haven't tried Freestone Farm CBD and you like CBD, you want to try any type of CBD, try Freestone Farm CBD. FreestoneFarmCBD.com. They grow all their premium hemp flower right there in the Garden State with all organic inputs and IPM. So there's nothing synthetic from farm to jar. And after harvest, they carefully preserve all plant compounds with a perfect 3-month cure. They have great tropical-tasting Bayox that clocks in at a chart-topping 24.1%, and Super CBD, which is half Hindu. Mike is all the way over there. Kush. Hopefully. At 21%. Genetics of these guys are off the charts. Check out Freestone Farm CBD, FreestoneFarmCBD.com. How about the Mojo app? Have you downloaded it? Especially you people in New Jersey. It's available in New Jersey. The Mojo app, mojo.com. The app that currently offers NFL players over 300 skilled players in the NFL. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. Each athlete's stock on Mojo has a share price that rises and falls in real time based on on-field performance, news, as well as anything that might affect expectations. Prices move all year long, so there's no off season. How great is that? I think maybe there's an underrated rookie out there, a rising star. This is what you need to do. You need to get that rookie. Buy low now. The example I've been using is Kenny Pickett. Maybe he's the guy that actually turns the Steelers season around. And maybe you can sell high later. Make some money. Give that a shot. Mojo is available in New Jersey on iOS. And just by downloading the app, you have a chance to win up to $10,000 in free shares of player stock. Click the link in the description for a chance to win $10,000 in free shares of player stock. Must be 21 or older and physically located in New Jersey to trade on Mojo. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. How about PHL Sports Nation, Philadelphia Sports Nation, enhancing your Philadelphia sports fan experience across all social media and blogs? That's PHLSportsNation.com. Mally, I see you there. Yes, there's no way I can be mature with a kicker like Dicker. I just can't. Don't expect me to be mature about it. Let's jump into the chat check. Speaking of which here, Kevin is saying the camera works again. Well, sort of. This is my iPhone that I'm speaking into from a distance. How's the audio? How we sounding, PJ? Is this going to be brutal for the people on the podcast? That's working. It's working. For the people on the podcast, Miss Guzzi. All right. Sean Gillespie, good morning. Random Anton, top of the morning. Sean Gillespie, Eagles will need a healthy run game, especially near the end of the season. If Miles and Boston Scott can only stay healthy, Boston is only 5'6". That is true. He tiny. Wait, Paul Keene, love the show, Farzy. Highlight of the workday when it comes on around 11:30 a.m. in Ireland. I think the Birds roll the Cards this week. Dallas's defense worries me. Yeah, I agree. Matthew Cronin, is this every morning? Do I do the show every morning? Yes, I do the show every morning. The camera work is usually better than what you're getting right now. The audio is better than what you're getting right now. But here, I'm gonna come here. Come behind the scenes for a second. Here you go. My setup is basically a capture card. I never knew what that was. I didn't even know what that was until Jim Hyden, producer extraordinaire, known in the chat as PJ, told me you're going to need a capture card if you want to do this. I said, okay, cool. So Jim was like, get a capture card. I got a capture card. And I've had that for a year and a half that we've been doing the show. And I got a new HDMI cable. It's not the cable. The cable is fine now. It's brand new. It's not working. The capture card might be the problem. The USB port might be the problem. So we're trying to do process of elimination. And so the new pieces are arriving today. So hopefully tomorrow we're up and running again. And maybe tomorrow we'll have a guest, like a real show. Anyway. Mally, when you have to spend the budget on weed and then the camera breaks, what are you going to do? Paul Keene. Paul, let me run this one by you real quick. If you're over there in Ireland. First off, I think I'm the only American mutt in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvanian mutt. That's like a mix of anything, and it's not at all Irish. Like I have no Irish blood in me. I'm mostly Italian, Polish, and so I just run this because my friend lived in Ireland for a couple of years, and he told me that true Irish people will look to compliment you for like the most mundane reason. And here's the example he always gives. He's American born. He went to I think 5th, 6th, and 7th grade in Ireland. His mom's from Ireland, and they went over to Ireland, and he lived there for a couple of years. And he said that in Ireland, they'll compliment you for drinking water, all right, or water. In other words, Americans, a lot of us now, we walk around with our giant water bottles, right? And we're drinking water left and right. In Ireland, apparently they don't do that. So he was telling me that they'll say to him, "Oh, Chad, you're a good one for drinking water, aren't you?" They'll say something like that. Pardon my accent. It's terrible. If anyone's at work listening, my apologies. I just can't do the voice of somebody else. I can't tell a story about somebody else when they have a distinct voice without attempting the voice. So he says that they'll attempt to compliment you for the most mundane things. And his example is always, "Oh, you're going for drinking water, aren't you?" Something like that. So do you guys do that? Do the Irish do that? Do they go with the big, heavy compliment, the big compliments for mundane things? You're a good one for picking up my pencil. Thank you. Something like that. Anyway. Boop. Sean Gillespie, the kicker's name is really Dicker. Yes, his name is really Dicker. That is true. Sean, welcome. Sean is welcoming Paul to Philly. Paul, welcome in. Matt, what time? I thought Farzy. Yeah, this is drink it in. Yeah, a little closer than the camera's a little closer today. Why, hello. Anyway, we try to start at 6 a.m., but it usually is 6:10 a.m. But Matthew, hope to see you in the chat even more so. Mally, the head is shining a little harder with this angle. Is it? Are the lights coming down? Should be. What's really weird is I'm looking over here and me, and then I look over there, and there's the camera portion of the phone, right? I feel like we all should have this down after going through the pandemic. But it looks a lot better up here than it does down there on my monitor. So there's that. Anyway, thanks to everybody in the chat. You guys are fantastic as per usual. Let's get into our morning rush brought to you by Sky Motor Cars, SkyMotorCars.com. Bailey Falter gets the start for the Phillies in the season finale against the Houston Astros tonight. Framber Valdez gets the start. A couple of lefties taking on one another. Bailey Falter, by the way, just one of those, I wouldn't call him an unsung hero, but he's been very much sung. And I think people have really acknowledged how great a job he has done for this Phillies team. And without Bailey Falter really stepping up to the plate, they would have had to go out and find more pitching, and they probably wouldn't be in the playoffs. That's what you could say when you talk about how close this playoff race was when it comes to what the Phillies have been able to do this season. Everything has mattered. Eddie Sosa having home runs and getting you base hits in mid-September, early September. That helps you tremendously. Garrett Stubbs walking it off against the Marlins helped you tremendously. Every little thing added up to this season and them actually making the playoffs. If you missed it earlier, I have forgiven the Phillies a little bit for the 10-0 loss, the no-hit bid into the ninth inning. I have forgiven them for that because, who's good at anything when they're hungover? The Phillies were obviously out celebrating like crazy last night. I recommended the scrap leg and cheese on an everything bagel to help get them through their hangover, and apparently they didn't have that last night. Maybe a fountain soda or a Gatorade, and it just didn't work out. That's the show today, folks. Appreciate you guys joining me, sticking it through this whole camera issue. So we appreciate that. Hopefully we'll be back with you guys with a little bit better technology next time around, like tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Much appreciated. Jim Hyden produced the program, did a wonderful job as per usual. Oh, hold on. Paul, dynamite. So Paul's the guy in Ireland. Didn't even realize it, but yeah, we do. But we also love to make fun of the people in a friendly way, too. A common phrase would be, a fair play to you, you're awfully healthy. A fair play to you, you're awfully healthy. I'm going to write that down and tell my Irish friend that. See if he can confirm. Paul, you're now the second person to confirm that, which means my friend is not just messing with me. By the way, Ireland is awesome. If no one's been to Ireland, if you guys haven't been to Ireland, you should go. It's a good time. Go to Temple Bar once. That's all you need. Speaking of hungover, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. My name is Mark Farzy. This is the Farzy Show, presented by my man Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers. Jim Hyden produced the program, did a wonderful job as per usual. This is a Buzz Sports Entertainment production. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Talk all things Phillies, what their playoff matchup will look like. Cardinals, baby. Good times. And we'll also talk about what else do we have in the docket tomorrow? Ooh, we have a little Sixers conversation to get into tomorrow as well. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. I'm Mark Farzetta. See you guys tomorrow.